Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Om Om Shanti 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 Om Namaste. Now we have light. Now I'm back. Okay. So we are covering the topic of the gunas, and in the previous class we began seeing the general features of each one of these gunas and the way they somehow condition our our personality, our body, mind, sense complex. We are all made out of prakriti and consciousness. So prakriti brings about the three energies, and then from the three energies, the subtle elements, and then the explosion of variations of prakriti configurations that makes up what we call the universe. So everything comes out of this spirit and matter slash energy, which can be addressed as spirit, purusha, and the three gunas. And it's important for us to understand our true nature, our nature, our real nature, and our apparent nature, because we cannot go about this spiritual path negating our apparent nature, our human nature, our prakriti nature. I mean, a lot of people makes an attempt to bypass one's process of knowledge, understanding of one's prakriti nature by saying, "Oh, there is this consciousness," and blah 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 blah. Forget about everything else, and you are this consciousness. And so I have been there. And it was illuminating when I got in contact with Vedanta because he addressed our prakriti nature as well, our matter, energy nature. And the importance is, although it's not real, we need to understand it. Why? Because we need to make improvements to this prakriti nature so that we can, once we have this body, mind, sense complex improved, purified, and refined, and so on. And then it's easy for us to understand and own our true nature, our real nature. But if our prakriti nature is not properly understood, we cannot even begin the process of improvement or purification because we don't understand anything. We just think, I am this body and I want what I want. And the purpose of the world is to fulfill my desires, and I go for what I want at any cost. So we need to understand our Prakriti nature. We need to understand Ishvara's nature as the supreme knowledge. We need to understand that we need to live in harmony, in resonance with Ishvara's Dharma, because that is the easiest, most natural way to purify and refine the body, mind, sense complex. So therefore, it's important for us to understand our Prakriti nature. That's why Krishna is diving into this topic now towards the end of the Gita, so that we can understand a little bit more why we behave, why we feel and think and experience life on different ways. And he is being divided in three categories. You either dominate by excess of sattva guna, rajoguna, or tamaguna. In each one of these predominance is going to create a different kind of character. And the idea here is not getting a sattvic character or personality, but it is to transcend the identification with these three categories of persons. But for that, we need to develop more sattva guna, knowing perfectly well that sattva guna is not going to free us. It's going to create a platform upon which I can get the knowledge of my true nature, which is guna tita, além, beyond or before the gunas or near guna, or free from the gunas. Huh? So that's what we are seeing here, and we continue seeing today. So we have seen that sattvic people, they get attached to the environment. So what binds us is according to our personality, more tamasic, more rajasic, or more sattvic. Our desires and fears, desires and aversion, raga and aversion, they are going to be colored for by that kind of constitution or proportion or configuration of the gunas. So, and what binds, as I was saying in the last class, what binds is binding desires and fears, binding raga and aversions, which binds us to samsara. No matter if it is sattvic binding ragadvesha or rajasic binding ragadvesha or tamasic binding. If we have binding ragadvesha, we are tied to samsara. We are not free. We are being pushed around by these gunas, and these gunas they push us around only to the extent that we identify ourselves with the gunas, with our personality, our character, our body, our bag of ragged vessels, so to speak. So we have seen all of that. So the sattvic is going to be bound to the environment, which is propitious to knowledge and peace of mind and deep meditation and so on. Rajasic person also get bound to samsara because he's going to demand all the time an environment which is propitious for lots of activities. You know? If you get a Rajas person and removes the person from a dynamic, active environment, the person suffers like hell, you know? The mind does not find an outlet for engaging in talking or doing things. It creates a lot of trouble. You know? So it wants activity. And if he does not get that much addicted, it's a sort of addiction, you know. I'm a Rajas person, I'm addicted to activity, you know, talking and doing things. And if I don't get that fix, I suffer. So generally speaking, these kind of people, they become workaholic. Now, this is a nice definition. Somebody who has so much Rajoguna and it feels comfort in doing things because a Rajasic mind, it's a very, very painful mind, you know. If you try to meditate when you have a very Rajasic mind, you see the trouble, you know. I mean, the Hamkara goes in denial. He's gonna say, "This is not for me. This is nonsense," and this and that, because a extremely Rajasic person will experience all those demands for activities, you know, and then the meditation is going to say, no, now you stop activities and you stay in silence, close your eyes and observe your mind or whatever, you know. And the mind is screaming, I want activity, I want activity, I want to move around. You know, it's a hell. I passed through that at the beginning, you know, many decades ago, trying to enter, to find a door into what you should call meditation, you know, without having any preparation, without having known and gone through the Karma Yoga, observance of Dharma, none of that, you know. I want to pasana. I want a peaceful mind, but the mind was in turmoil because it had too much Rajoguna. So a sattvic person travels from finitude to finitude. A rajasic
Hey,
person,
Alinda, you're sorry, you're breaking up a lot here. I don't know if Lynn's getting broken reception. Yes, as well. But your
let,
reception is breaking up a lot.
let me change my server here.
Okay, thanks.
Let me know if it got improved, okay? So Swami says a sattvic person travels from uh, finitude to finitude. The same with rajasic person. So it's always feeling finite and limited and incomplete, and it wants to remove that kind of uncomfortable feeling, experience of finitude and limitations and so on by doing things. If you are Rajasic, if you are Sattvic, you're gonna try to learn things, go to a library or go to meditation to try to remove the ignorance. So we are all trying to remove our sense of limitation, finitude, and incompletion by different ways according to our composition of the gunas, but fundamentally we are trying to remove this fundamental ignorance, which is the identification with my guna, body, mind, sense complex, or my prakriti. My prakriti is like this, and howsoever my prakriti body is composed, even if it's more sattvic, still I'm going to experience limitation, finitude, and incompletion. So, and then the trip of someone identified with the gunas is only and all the time from finitude to finitude. Okay? It goes on because the fundamental thing here is the identification with your guna nature, which makes you a person finite and limited by your very configuration as you know, a person, a body, mind, sense complex is limited by all means, and it finds a huge limitation to the extent that it feels more comfort when it has a certain environment, which is more in harmony with my nature. So it's trying to control its environment, its experience, and consider the impossibility one suffers the problematic of samsara, the inability, the impossibility of controlling our our parabada karma, our experience. I want to have good experience, pleasant experience all the time. I mean, unless we understand these things, we don't really grow, begin growing. So bottom line, the three gunas will bind anyone. There will be two forms of ahamkara. All the three forms are going to live in bondage. If you want to be free from the bondage of samsara, you have to transcend your ahamkara, which is your body mind sense complex, identified as the body mind sense complex. You have to transcend that mistaken identification and own up your true identity nature as Purusha, Gunatita, Gunatita Sakshi, consciousness. Krishna wants to point out one important thing. Even though the three gunas are causing bondage, don't believe that you have to throw away the three gunas because you need the three gunas to find your way into self-knowledge and liberation. No? So I remember when I first met Ramji and Vedanta, I identified some of my vasanas. And I was telling him, no, no, I already identified several vasanas and I'm eliminating them. And then he kind of told me, take it easy because we all have vasanas. We cannot live without vasanas. And that was really important for me to hear, you know. So we have this guna nature, the three guna nature, prakriti nature, and we need to keep it because it's impossible. It's the gunas, the three gunas are the building blocks of our construct, our body, mind, sense construct. Without the gunas, we don't exist. You know, it's the base, foundation of our of our existence as a human being. So we have to use these gunas as a ladder or stepping stones. We need to. How are you gonna do that? You're gonna, of course, you're gonna try to find environments which are more conducive to your guna nature, but you need to know that you want to have a predominance of sattva guna. If your goal is self-knowledge and moksha, no? So, and then you have the gunas. You know that the gunas are not going to free you because they bind, but yet you need to cultivate more sattva guna, converting more and more rajoguna, tamaguna into rajoguna into sattva guna, because you need to have a sattvic mental setup so that because that is the platform, that is the stepping stone from where self-recognition becomes much easier. We need therefore to manage the gunas, knowing that the goal is to transcend the identification with the gunas, but we know that we need to play with these gunas so that we develop a more sattvic personality. Yeah, more sattvic personality is going to call for a more sattvic environment, environment more propitious for knowledge and meditation, contemplation, study of the scriptures, and so on. We're going to use the gunas because we don't exist with the gunas, but it's as if we are using the gunas to transcend the gunas. We use the mind and the intellect to transcend our identification with mind and intellect, of course. So every knowledge is going to come through the mind and intellect, and anything requires the three gunas. So therefore, we definitely need a more sattvic body, mind, sense complex, but not for the sake of having a sattvic, clear mind. Because if I'm identified with my very clear and brilliant mind, I'm still in bondage, you know, because my identification is with the mind, and the mind changes, and no matter how much clear and how much knowledge I acquired through that more clear mind, I'm going to still feel I am limited, I'm finite, I'm incomplete. There is much, much more out there. Never ends. That's the problem. People who believe that more is the way to go. More and more is the better way to go. So as you know, that friend of mine from Northern California, he got lost in so many of these esoteric, mystical, New Age concepts, and he gets overwhelmed. There is so much to know, so much to know. I don't know if I'm gonna make an agar because it's so much to know, so much to know. Oh my God, how I'm gonna tell this guy that there is only one thing to be known? And because you know, if you want knowledge and you believe that knowledge is going to bring you a sense of uh, limitlessness and infinitudinous, or don't know how to say that, you are mistaken. So we need to transfer our identification from our guna nature, and as we know, that requires a sattvic uh, and a mind, a body, mind, sense complex, which is more sattvic, a little bit more sattva guna. This is a beautiful analogy. Swami brings up it again and again every time. I mean, in the sense of the gunas, this is a kind of guna. I forgot the expression in Sanskrit. Triguna Vibhava Yoga. So it's a yoga of the trigunas, and this gave rise to James writing a book and so on, trying to say how to manage the books. But this is a form of yoga, totally based on understanding. It's not a question of I'm calling this, I'm calling that. Understanding your prakriti nature, and then knowing that you need to develop more sattva guna. But you cannot just demand it, You cannot say, "Oh, I'm calling sattva guna," or you cannot just willpower is not going to produce. You need to understand it and then indirectly begin to cultivating using your understanding. And the understanding has to go all the way to create a better environment, which is more easily conducive to development of a scientific mind. You need a scientific environment, something that helps us. So we begin from that. That is a form of Triguna Vibhava or Vibhava yoga, okay? That comes from understanding, like everything in Vedanta, and willpower as well. It's difficult. You have to have understanding and willpower to see like this is not going to take me into and to the peace and satisfaction, happiness I want in my life. My environment is not right for self-knowledge, so I need to change my environment. But people attach to their environment. And then willpower is also involved, You have to, look at things more clear and say, no, I need to change a little bit. I want to have self-knowledge, but I have a lifestyle which is frenetic with so much activity, and I'm still running behind for or after uh, mundane goals in life, which is not going to help. It's not going to bring self-knowledge. It's not going to bring the base upon which self-knowledge can be assimilated, so on. So free will is important. Willpower is important. But understanding is that which is going to drive and command and direct your willpower. Your power needs to be directed by a higher center, which is our Viveka Shakti, who says, "No, I understood. I understood the yoga of the gunas. I need to now create an environment which helps me to develop a more sattvic mind, even if it hurts a little bit in the beginning due to attachments." And the analogy here is very nice and very simple. When they go for the Olympiads, there is the jump over the bar, no? And you have a pole vaulter, uh, and you have to every runner has to just fly over the bar using the help of a pole, as it seems, or pool, I don't know. And and then the point is, when you get up there, you are not attached to that stick, that pole. When you are up there, when you got enough momentum, you just leave it behind, and then you fly without it. If you carry it all the way, there is more weight, and then the pole is gonna hit the bar. So you use it, and let it behind. Yeah, it's a step stone. It's just a means by which you accomplish something totally different from the means by which you are approaching it. So it's not that you reject the pole. We just we leave it behind with love and gratitude the same way. So we have to have a good attitude towards our prakriti nature rather than reject it with a sense of disgusting, because it is through our prakriti nature that we can refine and grow, mature to the point of understanding our nirguna nature, guna tirtha nature. So we need to drop the pull, meaning to say we need to drop our identification with a sattvic construct. Once we got there, oh, I have such a good mind, good intellect, and good IQ, and I love knowledge, and I'm good in meditation, and so on. They say, okay, now you have everything going for you. Drop the identification with this construct now that is more sattvic. Because the problem is in the identification with your prakriti nature. Because your prakriti nature not only is going to cry for a certain environment, your prakriti nature is subject to limitation. And the biggest limitation is mortality. For as long as we're identified with our prakriti nature, we are living fear of mortality. So the other possibility is say, no, 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 no. I mean, I am from the direct path. I have been in contact with some direct gurus and so on. If I have to do all these sadhanas at the end, if I have to drop them all, and then why I do not drop them from the beginning and I don't do any sadhana? Because after all, the search is the impediment. The search is the problem. The seeking is the problem. Huh? If I'm gonna have to drop the seeking and the searching at the very end, why not to drop at the beginning, like Balsekar used to suggest, and know that you're rent free, you are consciousness, you're not the doer, and so on. So you don't need to do anything. So you understand it. You're not the doer. So how am I going to understand unless I do something to improve my prakriti nature until I have enough sattva guna para understand you, Mr. Ramesh Balsekar. Yeah. Okay. So we require all the gunas. An intelligent person use the pole to jump over the bar, and an intelligent seeker use the gunas to transcend its guna nature. It's like a ahamkara pole. A pole. You require tamaguna as well, rajoguna. The most subtle or abstract more way is to of these gunas to be understood is tamaguna, because tamaguna produce dullness in the mind. It's like the mind is like a little bit like depressed and apathic and so on. But yet it's said that it's important as well. It's important because you need tamaguna to fall asleep. You need tamaguna to remain a little bit grounded, otherwise you start just going a little bit in the la la land as well and lose objectivity. But Rajoguna is more easy for us to understand because we need to have this dynamic Rajoguna within our reach, because only with this Rajoguna energy or Raja energy I can implement improvement and betterment and transformation in my body mind sense complex. So I need energy to implement betterment, improvement, refinement, purification. It requires energy. And And of course, Sattva Guna is absolutely important, because if I have Sattva Guna, a certain degree of Sattva Guna, I can make a better reading of the situation around me and offer a better response. Life is about stimulus and response. If my mind is more clear, I have a little bit more objectivity, and I can make a better reading and offer a better response considering all the factors and so on. So Sattva Guna is absolutely necessary even for living a non-spiritual life, because at least you are a little bit wiser in reading the situation and presenting a response or a solution. No? So Tamaguna helps us to rest Rajoguna, you have used Rajoguna to become a Kama Pradana person and follow Kama Yoga. So even on this, when you become the spiritual path, you begin. So you need energy to not only to do your actions, to do your karmas, to interact with the field, but interact with the field, converting those actions in sadhana, spiritual sadhanas. It requires even more energy. You need to have physical energy and intellectual, cognitive energy to know this is not an action by itself, this is my sadhana. And that's how I'm purifying and growing. I'm just learning to see everything as God. I'm learning to observe God's laws and principles and make an effort to remember that I live within God and I have to be in harmony with its laws if I want to have peace of mind and so on. All of this requires tremendous amount of cognitive, intellectual energy and physical energy, mental energy, emotional energy. So Rajaguna is fundamental. Karma Yoga requires lots of Rajaguna. And Yana Yoga requires what? A lot of Sattva Guna. Okay, because when you come to Yana Yoga, you are not meant to do anything. You know, you do things when you are still in the Karma Yoga, and then which includes observance of Dharma, and then Upasana Yoga. So that you need a lot of effort, Rajoguna, to do those things, observe Dharma and so on. But when you come to Yana Yoga, you are just invited to soak your intellect in these teachings and make an effort to understand it. So there is Rajoguna, of course, there is Rajoguna all through, but the Rajoguna is a smaller proportion. You need more Sattvaguna, less Rajoguna, but regardless, you need Sattvaguna. Cognitively, you need to make an effort of reflection, contemplation, so that the assimilation grows, you know? So, but definitely you need a more sattvic ahamkara once we enter the Yana Yoga. Suppose you're in the class and you have yet a tamasic ahamkara. So people begin dozing, and then all the rajasic people in the classroom, rather than paying attention to the class, they are just observing and taking notes of everybody who is dozing. And the more sattvic people are not dozing and they're not paying attention to everybody who's dozing, it's just paying attention to the words of the guru. Okay? So it's a nice joke, nice way to illustrate the situation within a Vedantic class. So if you are watching everything around you and not pay attention, it means you have a wandering mind. You have a dozing mind, which if you are more tamasic. And therefore, Rajasic Pradhana mind or Tamasic has a hard time to learn. So we need a mind which is more alert, more vigilant, more clear, no wandering, no more thoughts, a mind that is observing the teachings like a sponge. Very nice picture. And then this mind will rapidly get this wisdom. And which wisdom? The wisdom is I'm not my ahamkara, howsoever configuration, you know. Sometimes my ahamkara is more tamasic, I'm not my tamasic ahamkara. Sometimes my ahamkara is more rajasic, I'm not my rajasic ahamkara. Sometimes my mind is sattvic, I'm not my sattvic ahamkara. So that is the final understanding. It's a shift in one sense of identification from our prakriti inferior nature to our true real nature as guna chitta, consciousness. We have to know the nature of the three gunas. Thus, we have to know the nature of the three gunas because we're going to have to discriminate our true nature from the features of our guna nature. If we don't know our prakriti nature, which is our guna nature, and the way the gunas are going to influence or to dominate my personality, and I'm invited to make this ultimate viveka, which is you have to do a discrimination. From the guna standpoint, it's a more complex kind of viveka. You have to discriminate and between not between your mind, which is a general kind of approach, or your intellect. You have to discriminate between your three gunas, which is the foundation upon which your mind and intellect are built. So now you are in a much more subtle region. You are discriminate between your guna nature, and your real nature as consciousness. So you need to understand. You have to make the mind subtle enough to understand the teaching of the gunas, because ultimately this teaching is going to help you to discriminate and negate your guna nature and own your guna tita nature. That's the purpose of this yoga. Discrimination. And then we go into the next file. The body mind sense complex is matter slash energy, is my guna body mind sense complex. Guna, the building blocks of my body mind sense complex. It's all inert, all chetana, insentient. Okay? It's just dead matter. But somehow this body mind sense complex, my guna body mind sense complex, appears as if sentient. It is sentient, but the sentience does not belong to the gunas. The sentient belongs to consciousness. This consciousness somehow reflects or shines in the subtle body, because the subtle body has more, among the three bodies, has more sattva guna in its constitution, and then it shines also. Aham, I am, I exist. That is the light, the shine of consciousness upon the subtle body. No? And then the subtle body experiences this ahamkara, which says aham, 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 eu sou, I am, yes, I. And this I, he has no clue that he's not the insentient guna body mind sense complex. He takes its sentience as a product or property of the gunas, the property of my prakriti body mind sense. It's intuitive. Nobody needs to be taught this, but unconscious, everybody comes to that conclusion, determination. Oh no, yeah, I'm sentient because I gain it from the gunas, from my body mind sense complex, which is energy and matter. So there we go. I mean, yes, consciousness, human sentience is a product or a property of my prakriti nature. A big mistake, but how not to fall? I mean, we need the scriptures, and we need to put a lot of work, contemplate these teachings to understand that my guna, body, mind, sense complex is absolutely insentient, but somehow it shines with aham. And this shine is, so to speak, consciousness reflect upon the subtle body to produce human consciousness, we can say. And this human consciousness is not intrinsically owned by the body, it's not a byproduct of the body, but it's a free and independent principle that somehow shine upon the three bodies, which is the prakriti, three bodies, it shines with Aham. And we need to make this viveka at the end, you know. So I hear that the sentient source of my existence here is has nothing to do with the gunas, is before or beyond the gunas. Guna chitta is nirguna. So the sentience comes from something that nobody can see, touch, feel, and smell or anything. It's most invisible, more subtle. So, but yet it's the only source of sentience. And people, they say, I don't know, but I don't buy into this, you know. 99.999% of the people in the spiritual world do not buy much into that. Um, and here Swami reminds us that we can see it as a reflection upon the subtle body, mirror, uh, or a projection upon consciousness, you know, which brings about the aham, the ahamkara. So just as a mirror, the non-luminous mirror, this is nice, the non-luminous mirror becomes a bright mirror when it has some sunlight to reflect. When it reflects, ooh, this mirror is full of light. But does the light belong to the mirror? No, it's a reflecting medium. So we need to be careful when we look at the bright mirror. We should always remember that the light does not belong to the mirror. The mirror is just has no light whatsoever. And what is the mirror? Swami is unfolding this. The mirror has two parts to itself. One is its constitution, which is matter, okay? And the other is the reflection that occurs, okay? When the sunlight hits, it reflects. When the electrical light, so it has two things: the light and the objects contained in that reflection, revealed by the same light, you know, and the physical material mirror. Likewise, we have our physical material triguna body mind sense complex, okay, and we have the reflection that occurs upon the gunas, which is aham. So even if a person is totally tamasic, with almost no ability to learn or to inquire or to ask any profound question or fundamental questions in life, you know, still there is a reflection of consciousness that producing the ahamkara, the aham. But the aham is totally tamasic or partially tamasic, rajasic, has not enough sattva guna to bring this ahamkara into a deeper inquiry into its true nature and the nature of reality and how to find happiness in these births and so on. They don't get that. They behave more like animals because they are too tamasic. And sometimes tamasic and rajasic, they're dominating the personality. So fundamentally, howsoever our configuration of the gunas, there are two things to us. One is the substantial material nature of our body, mind, sense complex, and the reflect consciousness. So when we study Vedanta at the beginning, it was presented to us that the jiva, the ahamkara, is the subtle body, you know. What is, no, it's the subtle body, the same thing. Jiva is the subtle body. It's not really like that. The jiva is a mixture of both the mirror and the reflection upon the mirror. What it means? It means that the jiva is the subtle body, which is the reflecting medium, okay? And the reflection occurring upon that reflecting medium. Why it's important we own that? A higher nature we see in our inferior nature is the reflect consciousness, and the inferior nature we see in our apparent nature, which is the reflecting medium. Why it's important? I understand the difference because if I want to get a better ahamkara, a better reflection, I need to polish my reflecting medium. You understand? I need to polish it. And how am I going to polish it? Lifestyle, and understanding the teachings, understand the teachings on Triguna, Vibhava, yoga, and so on, and then making an effort to live, in a certain lifestyle now, which helps me to polish my reflecting media. So we have two natures to us, such as the nature of a mirror in analogy, it is the reflecting medium and the reflection that occurs within that medium. So ahamkara is like that, similar. We have a mirror, it's more or less bright according to the proportion of the gunas. And the ahamkara is a mixture of the two parts. They are both parts are within mithya nature, or it's mithya, but it's different because this is a very good point, and it's profound, and it's worth we take a moment here because the human consciousness or reflected consciousness, it's going to be conditioned by the configuration of the three gunas constituting the reflecting medium. So if the reflecting medium is more sattvic, we're going to have a reflection which is more clear, and therefore this reflection is going to have a potential for understanding, the difference between the reflecting medium, the reflected consciousness, and original consciousness, which fundamentally is the true nature of this reflected consciousness. Reflect consciousness has a potential when the mind is more sattvic to understand that its very nature is original consciousness, in the same way that the reflect moonlight, is of the same nature of original sunlight. They are both light waves, light rays, So we have these three principles, and what allows the Jivatma to own and to say, yes, Aham Brahmasmi, the Guru was right, Tattvamasi, you are of the nature of Nirguna consciousness, So what allows it? It is the reflected consciousness, which depends on the reflecting medium. The reflecting medium is absolutely net. The reflection has a feature to it, which is sentience. I'm the sentient being in my reflection. My reflection may be not enough for me to understand and own my true nature as nirguna consciousness, but yet this reflection is the sentient nature of the jiva. So it is the atma nature of the jiva. Therefore, this sentience is the stepstone on which we can understand the Tattvamasi, or further down the road, yes, Aham Brahmasmi, I am of the nature of consciousness, everything is of the nature of consciousness. Then we have these three elements of our Ahamkara nature, the reflecting medium, the reflect consciousness, and then we see the reflect consciousness. There is something which is absolutely not realized as limitless consciousness, but with a potential for the realization of the Aham Brahmasmi. So this reflection is upon this reflection that we should invest our energies, because although the reflection is still a mithya phenomenon, it depends on the reflecting medium, which depends on the three bodies, depends on the gunas. This reflection is still happening within mithya, but as I like to put very often, it's within mithya, within this reflection, which is more sattvic in this explanation. I can understand and own my true nature is nirguna, guna tirtha, consciousness, pure consciousness, okay? Nirguna consciousness. Uh, that clear? This term is very beautiful. We call it Pratibimba Chaitanya. So Pratibimba Chaitanya plus the subtle body, let's say, the reflecting medium. So it brings about the Jivatma. Pratibimba Chaitanya plus the subtle body brings about reflect consciousness, which is another name for the Ahamkara. Ahamkara, unfortunately, identifies with the body mind, and develops a sense of possession. Therefore, we say Ahamkara Mamakara, and then one is bound to samsara. So this Sak Chaitanya is neither the body, and it's not the reflected consciousness. Original consciousness is not equal to reflect consciousness, but reflect consciousness, which is the Ahankara and the Jiva, under certain sattvic conditions and with the help of the scripture and the potential to understand that although consciousness is not reflect consciousness is fundamentally, essentially, limitless pure consciousness. Pure consciousness is not reflect consciousness, but reflects consciousness. Once examined very, very closely with the help of the scriptures, can understand it on its true essential nature as original consciousness. So consciousness is different from both, different from the subtle body and the reflection upon the subtle body. So Tattva body and then the formulas of Swamiji. Then Tattva body say reflect medium plus reflect consciousness is equal to Ahamkara. We know all of that. We have seen, and I have been explaining a little bit more here. So what is consciousness? It's neither the reflecting medium nor the reflect consciousness, but it is what? What we call original consciousness. In OC, in original consciousness, our lifespan is running. I don't know what he's saying here is running. We live totally dependent upon consciousness. Without consciousness, there is no jiva, there is no jagat, there is no consciousness. And we see this absolute true reality, which is consciousness. My appearance, my time spent in this life is running out. So, I mean, I'm just making addition in terms of interpretation here. But it is, what we need to understand. So original consciousness is called my higher nature, my true nature, as I prefer. And reflect consciousness plus reflect medium is called my lower nature. And the Ahankara Amsa, the Saksha Amsa, and the Ahankara Amsa is together inseparably. So the Ahankara is the Ahankaramsa and Shakti and the Ahankaramsa is together inseparably. I don't know if he's meaning to say that the Ahankara lives within consciousness and never apart from consciousness. Maybe that's what he's trying to say. I think that's it. When I use the word I'm using a mixture of both I consciousness and I reflect consciousness. You know? So I cannot experience the Ahamkara without experience original consciousness. This is another important pointer, Consciousness is that which is never not present. When we experience life interacting with other objects, we experience consciousness not as an object, but as a principle, always ever present, without which I cannot experience my reflect consciousness, and the world obtains through this reflect consciousness. So we are always having consciousness and ahankara. Therefore, we are here in this duality, experiencing the world out there and the inner world of thoughts, feelings, and emotions. So these both principles are together always from the standpoint of reflect consciousness, but original consciousness is free and independent of Ishvara, Jiva, and Jagata. So Jagata is a reflection upon the prakriti of Maya, and Jiva Atma, the Ahamkara, is a reflection upon the reflecting medium, which is the subtle body of each individual. Consciousness is free from the macro reflection and free from the micro reflection upon the subtle body of all jivas. But the Ahamkara cannot exist without consciousness. We live within consciousness, and consciousness is God. So the Sakshi is Nirguna, the reflect consciousness is Saguna. This is another thing that people at the beginning have difficult to reconcile, something that appears to be a little bit contradictory. So you say consciousness is nirguna, the reflective consciousness is saguna. Okay, because when the consciousness bounces or shines or reflects upon the subtle body, it carries with it the colors, so to speak, of the gunas. It has a gunic, so to speak, reflection, that so much so that we can say, oh yes, my mind today is more rajasic. It is reflect consciousness that somehow went there and got messed up with Rajoguna or got colored by the Guna, got contaminated by too much Rajoguna, and then has a reflection which is more Rajasic. How can we reconcile and say, like, I can own and say, I am of Guna Tirtha nature. I am Nirguna. I am the original consciousness. Okay, so how I can come to that understanding if my reflect consciousness is also prakriti, is also mithya. So if I see here that both, because ahankara contains body, mind, prakriti, therefore ahankara is endowed with the three gunas, my lower nature, and so on. If I have my lower nature, which is the reflect medium plus reflect consciousness, and both of them prakriti, both of them achetana, insentient, and so on. So, by the way, I was going using different terms here. So the body, mind, and complex cement, prakriti, and therefore ahankara is endowed with three gunas. Ahankara answer means aspect, face or part. My lower nature is saguna, yeah, saguna and nirguna. So the reflection is saguna, the reflecting medium is saguna. How can a reflecting medium, which is saguna, say I am the nature of nirguna, consciousness? So that is something that requires some subtle contemplation, so that we don't find real contradictions there, and we can understand that although our reflect consciousness is of the nature of saguna, if we have enough of a certain guna called sattva guna, and if we have a sattva guna which is turned inwards within this search or inquiry into the true nature of reality. So, although it's my Saguna nature, but with a potential to understand its very nature as Nirguna Chaitanya, Nirguna consciousness was true nature. It's so, words cannot describe exactly this phenomenon, our Saguna nature understanding claiming and owning its nirguna nature. If it's my saguna nature, how can it own my nirguna? Because the essential nature of everything in this mitya saguna universe is nirguna consciousness. It's a question of you understand your true nature. Okay? So we're gonna see more next Monday. But now it's time, it's now better I save my voice, which seems to be getting a little bit better. Anything else?
No, I think it's very important to keep in mind that this refinement process depends upon knowledge.
Definitely.
Really.
Yeah. The Triguna yoga, Vibhava, depends on knowledge, mostly knowledge. Every yoga, when you come to Vedanta, requires knowledge and effort and willpower to implement the knowledge. But before we come to Yin Yoga, more often than not, it does not require knowledge, but require most willpower, you know?
Well, I thought when I really seriously embarked on karma yoga, there was a lot of understanding necessary before that.
Oh,
Really took hold.
as I often say, Karma Yoga is the yoga of knowledge. That's why it's under the
Yeah,
umbrella of Vedanta.
yeah, yeah,
It's the knowledge in respect to the prakriti nature of this world, Ishvara, Jiva, and Jagat, you know? It's a
yeah,
Mitya knowledge, which is fundamental, but it's knowledge yoga.
yeah.
Yeah.
Without that understanding of your place, um, the ahamkara's place, how
Yeah.
can one offer everything back to Ishvara?
What I meant by before Vedanta, before Yana Yoga, before Karma Dharma, etc., before Vedanta, we are doing other kinds of yogas, which either they are there on the level of rituals or japas or tapas or mantras or kirtans or anything like that, you are doing things which are actions, sometimes verbal, sometimes physically. And those actions do not require much knowledge except the technique of what you have to do to gain
Right?
a result. A result is a better experience of yourself and the world.
Beautifully put. Yes, precise. Thank you so much. Lovely class.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishate Om Shanti 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 Om Namaste. Namaste, Mark. You're going to say something when I begin? Our
I
Purna?
was just going to say, very nice class, Arlindo. Great knowledge and very practical. Very good stuff. So much
Yeah,
appreciated.
very nice. I enjoyed it as well. Much love to you guys. We meet on Monday then. Okay?
Okay.
Bye
To
bye.
you also, Arlindo. God bless. Okay.
Thank you.